I absolutely love playing the drums. In the 6th grade, I had the opportunity to pick up my first pair of drumsticks and begin my loud and obnoxious career of drum playing. I was fascinated with drumming. It seemed like everywhere I would go, beats would constantly be inside my head. I even got myself into trouble in class for tapping away while my teachers would be teaching. But getting into trouble was a risk I was willing to take in order to enjoy one of my favorite things in life. I risked a lot of time becoming good at playing the drums. And looking back on this part of my life, I wouldn't have traded the way I used my time. Risk surrounds us, doesn't it? In just about everything we do, there is risk involved. From risking time practicing the drums to stepping outside of our doors each morning, risk is everywhere. But when presented with the risk of life, those risks, in order to make our lives fulfilling, do we take them or do we let them fall by the wayside? How many times do we do this? We don't take a risk, a chance, an opportunity because we are too afraid of what could happen, what responsibilities could come along, or simply the fear of failing. We mentally take ourselves out of a situation by saying, there is no way I can be successful. No way I can be that good. No way I could ever do that. Why? Why don't we neglect these thoughts and grasp the opportunities placed in front of us? There are 3 ways in which we should risk. Risk more than just 5 minutes, risk for what is right, and risk for life. First, we must look at the way we take risks by looking at how much time we take for them. When I turned 12 years old, I was officially deemed old enough to actually, from what my parents said, work. And the best teacher for this was my grandfather. Now put yourselves in my shoes here for just a second. A 12-year-old kid being told by his parents that he was going to a small town 150 miles away in the middle of summer, in the middle of the piney woods of East Texas, just to learn how to work. Am I the only one that sees what's wrong with this picture? I mean, come on. I was giving up a week of my life, a week of my precious summer that I would never get back, just to learn how to work? Needless to say, I was not a happy camper. But when I arrived at my grandparents' house, I can still remember the last thing my dad said to me before he left. Now, Will, be good and mind your grandparents. I don't want to hear a bad report from grandmother. I know, Dad, I'll be good. And listen to what Granddaddy says. He is the smartest man I know, you know? Okay, Dad, I will. And that was it. I was stuck at my grandparents' house learning how to work. But from what I can remember from that week and all the yard work and chores I had to do, the week actually seemed to just fly by. I remember I learned the oh-so-fun task of mowing the lawn, trimming the hedges, and weed eating. But more importantly, I gained a valuable relationship with my grandfather that I cherish to this day. Eventually, I made it through Granddaddy boot camp and time went on. I went on with life at Midlothian, mowing the lawn and doing, from what I was told, actual real work. But 2 years after my boot camp, something happened that would turn my world upside down. I remember my parents getting the phone call. My grandfather had experienced a massive respiratory attack and was being hospitalized in Tyler. The situation did not look good. I couldn't believe the news. When the paramedics had arrived, my grandfather's pulse looked something like this. Beep, beep, beep. My grandfather had been such a strong individual. He could never die. Could he? I mean, he'd invested so much time in me. Could all that he had taught me go to waste? Would I ever get to spend time with him again? The amazing part of this story is that by some grace bigger than us, my grandfather sits in this arena today. My grandfather gave me one of the most valuable things he could, his time. But it took his fight with death for me to realize that. Granddaddy, thank you so much. You have no idea how much you mean to me. I look forward to spending a week with you this summer. You are worth my time. Every day there are chances to make a difference in someone else's life. But it seems like we get into a routine, doesn't it? We go to school each morning and we hang out with the same friends and think that everything is okay when we know something is going on in someone else's life. But do we take the time to help them out with their troubles? Do we really offer them the time they deserve? My grandfather risked a week of his life to teach me something he thought was important, and in doing so, left an everlasting impact on my life. How much time will you risk to help your peer in need? Risk more than just 5 minutes. Next time we are given that opportunity to make a difference in someone else's life, let's risk our time for them. Do you remember what it was like to be a kid? No responsibilities, Disney movies, and a whole world outside for you to explore. It was awesome, wasn't it? My favorite times growing up as a kid were hanging out with friends. And my two best friends growing up was my good friends Conrad and Katie. The three of us lived right around the corner from each other, and it didn't matter whose house we were at, an adventure would always seem to find us. It's funny how as kids, we don't care about who we hang out with. All that matters to us is if we have fun. Why is it that we lose this aspect when we move on to high school? Suddenly we walk through the doors of our high school and all that matters is who has the nicest clothes, the coolest hairstyle, or the newest cell phone. My high school was no different than most high schools. Of course, there were the cliques. The jocks, the band nerds, the ad kids, the emos, you name it, we had it. But there was one student in our whole high school that never was quite part of some group. My childhood friend Katie was seen as that girl. As Katie and I had grown up, we had definitely grown apart from each other. Katie was the one person in our whole high school of 2,500 students that everyone knew as the crazy girl. She never, to my knowledge, had a friend. She would walk the halls of our high school, and people would stare at her as she would walk by. Whenever her name would come up in conversation, it felt as if a huge elephant had just walked itself into the room. Everyone had the same thought, the thought that she was legitimately psycho, but no one was going to say anything about it. No one ever stood up for her, but I did. At least that's what I wish I could say. Never from what I remember did I ever stand up for her and her personality. I was too afraid of what other people would look at me as if I just said, "Hey man, that's messed up." We all know she has problems. Katie ended up being checked into a mental hospital near the end of our senior year. Even after she returned a month later, two things remained the same. People still made fun of her, and I still did nothing. Why? I still can't fully answer that question. I had the opportunity to be the friend that she always needed. I had the opportunity to say some helpful words to help her get better, but I just didn't try. I didn't want to be looked at by others for being associated with a crazy girl, even if it was the right thing to do. I was too blinded by my silly reputation to see how much someone else's life was in need of something, someone to help them. And let me be the first to tell you, when you graduate high school and you move on in life, the reputation you wish to uphold in high school is not important to anyone anymore. No one cares if you're the most popular guy in high school or even if you're the one who partied the most. No one cares when you move on. It's a blunt way of saying it, but it's the truth. I wasn't willing to risk my reputation. I hope and pray you will be. In our schools at home, no matter how big or how small, there was someone longing, begging, needing for someone like us. Each of us here has the power to change a life for the better. We just have to be willing to risk what other people think of us. Who cares if they judge us for doing what is right? Is it worth watching one of your friends hate their life? I can be the first to tell you it's not. Risk for what is right. Whether it's giving someone a few dollars so that they can eat lunch, giving someone having a hard time a hug, or simply just saying hi in the hallway, we have no idea the kind of impact we leave on the ones around us. So let's make sure we leave a lasting impact on those who need it. And once we have risked our time and ourselves for others, we must take action upon the risks in our lives. Which reminds me of my first surfing experience. It was a moment I will never forget as long as I live. The feeling of being one with the force of the ocean beneath my feet was truly moving. And when being told I was going to have the opportunity to surf, I, as like many people, wanted to know all about what I was going to be doing. I, of course, was going to be the best surfer ever before I'd even stepped on a surfboard. When researching this awesome topic, I came across a legendary man named Laird Hamilton. And while I tell you about him, I'll show you too. Laird is a legendary pro big wave surfer who lives in Hawaii. Laird is legendary because on multiple occasions, he has changed the perception of what is thought to be possible in the world of surfing. Laird's most famous wave is the wave simply known as Chopu. This wave has been attempted by many, and lots have lost their lives in doing so. Laird, in 2000, was the first man ever to take on the 50-foot massive wave and live to tell the tale. Laird risked his life to succeed at something he loved, and in doing so, changed the perception of what is thought to be possible. Afterwards, Laird had this to say on his view of life and why he does what he does. He said, "I don't want to not live because of my fear of what could happen." My challenge to each of you is to find that one thing that maybe you thought you could do, the one thing that maybe you've always wanted to do, whether it's asking around, trying out for football, or running for office in your chapter. Risk for it, because will you be able to say that you lived and didn't worry about what could have happened? Risk for life. It's amazing just how complete we are when we risk our time, ourselves, and take action upon the risks in our lives. We see that life is worth the risk. Every day, there's risk in everything we do. Whether it's getting up to go to school in the morning or risking your time with a person who needs it, risk defines our lives. The truth is, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. You don't know what will happen as you leave this arena. Don't wait for someone else to risk for you when you have the power within yourself to do what is right. Live each day to the fullest and risk, because whether you risk your time, your reputation, or as in Laird's case, your life, the risk we take defines what we are. Your life is what you make of it. Don't wait to risk for what is right. Don't wait to take control of your life. Don't wait to risk beyond what people limit you to. Why? Because life is worth the risk.